destination. You are. You're the light in this darkness. You're the hope.
Good evening from New York. I am Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS As It Is. This actually is our fourth show after the general elections in Guyana. First of all, I would like to congratulate all our peoples, all six, and everyone who worked as hard, regardless of your party, to ensure that we have a free and fair election. Um, President-elect David Granger has been sworn in yesterday, and throughout the diaspora, there are mixed feelings, those who have voted for him and those who have not. But more importantly, I believe that I can say that many of us are very happy. I think change is important. I think um, we are at a crossroads, and we have an opportunity to ensure some form of transformation. Tonight, I have invited some of our people to have a discussion about looking ahead, what it means to have a change of government. The gentleman you see next to me is Mr. Kojo McPherson. Kojo, good evening and welcome to CWS As It Is again.
Good evening, Selwyn. How are you?
Fine, thank you, my brother. Kojo, in one sentence, you've been here before, but we might have some new listeners. What do you do? Who's Kojo?
Kojo is a creative professional who applies his trade in photography and filmmaking for the most part.
Awesome. Kojo, what is happening? How do you feel now that we have a new government?
It begins like the beginning. It feels like the beginning of something new. It's obviously the end of one era and the beginning of another. But going into this election months ago, I told friends of mine quietly that I felt that if the coalition was not able to win 55% of the vote, that I felt that it would be a failure for the country. So when I looked at the papers today, because of course over the last few days you've heard different numbers thrown about: a 15,000 vote lead, 24,000 vote lead, 5,000 vote lead, and to see how close this victory is it doesn't quite feel like a victory. It feels like we still have much work to do, and so I don't think it should have been that close. I really don't think it should have been that close given just the situation on the ground. Between just looking at the numbers, the stats, and hearing reports of racist behavior being perpetrated by both sides, um, I feel as though there's much work to do. It doesn't feel like a victory as yet.
Mm-hmm.
It'll feel like a victory to me a year from now, even 5 years from now. To me, the real victory is if 5 years from now, the people give this coalition a mandate. That would feel like a victory to me. I don't feel as though we have a true mandate.
Why do you personally believe the margin was so close? And what do you say to those who are saying they don't believe the margin was really that close?
Well, I'm one of those people that doesn't unofficially
Right.
that doesn't feel the margin was that close. What was, I can't remember the exact quote, but history is the best predictor of the future, and we know that, well, it's been reported, and there's strong suggestions that the PNC doesn't have the franchise the PNC of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s didn't have the franchise on rigging, and there are a lot of people who feel very strongly that the PPP also manipulated the democratic process over the last few elections.
Mm.
But I don't want to get too much into that because that would just descend into more of the finger pointing and blaming that we're trying to move past. But beyond that kind of manipulation of the numbers, there's definitely the manipulation of the people.
Mm.
I'm not talking about persuasion that all politicians do. I'm talking about the violent, nasty, just downright evil race baiting and fear mongering that we saw during this election, for the most part, coming from former President Adio.
Let's talk about that. How did that resonate with you, knowing that this is a former president and should actually be behaving as a statesman? How does that resonate with you, hearing all this rhetoric?
I think as a Guyanese living here day in day out, I think he become jaded, and so it wasn't too much of a surprise that he would do that. Maybe some of the links that they went to. I mean, for instance, and this did go in a press release. I drafted that press release myself, and I recorded the audio from that conversation. Although I don't think it got too much attention. When we went to Paramakatoy, immediately before the Mahdia rally, we got on the ground and we heard reports that PPP activists had been there and said that David Granger, quote unquote, is going to kill all straight hair people. And that goes beyond the complete. I don't even want to use certain language on your program, even if it's not exactly profanity. It goes. I mean, we've all heard the rumors from the PPP that, or the tales that they spin that there will be long bread lines and flour is going to be banned and all that sort of thing, which is actually one of the reasons why I jokingly made this post on my Facebook page, but I'm hoping that we can actually pull it off. Right. So I have a recording, not of David Granger responding to this rumor that had been spread in the community of Paramakatoy, that David Granger would kill all straight hair people. This is our Amerindian community. He also said that that under David Granger presidency, people would not be allowed to worship in their churches. So those are the two lies that we heard on that particular trip. It wasn't an isolated incident in terms of the shuttering of churches, but I was particularly hurt by the rumor that David Granger will quote unquote kill all straight hair people.
And who is saying this?
This is apparently PPP activists. I don't know who else it would be. PPP activists.
Okay.
Telling Amerindian communities this in the Rupununi and in other hinterland areas.
Mm-hmm. What was your connection? I've seen you with your camera, and I've seen photographs you've taken, very impressive ones. What was your connection to the campaign?
My connection to the campaign, PR, communications, to amplify the work of the candidate, now president. That was my connection to it. So primarily photography. There was a documentary that I produced as well, and I was working along with the PR team to try and amplify the work of the client.
What was that like for you, following now President David Granger? What was that like? What was that experience like?
I can tell you that I have immense respect for the man's work ethic. He really is tireless. He's tireless. He's sincere. He's no nonsense. Um, he doesn't go to politic to people. He goes to, you know, talk policy, talk the facts. Not too keen on the rah-rah so much, even though that's part of what all politicians have to learn to do, and that's an important tool, you know. But he's very keen on policy and bread and butter issues and matters of development and matters of national unity, of bringing the country together, not just along, you know, racial lines, but also geographically as well. Just on a quick tangent, as much as Georgetown and Region 4 has deteriorated, if you go into Region 1, or let's be even more extreme, you go to Region 9. Region 9 does not have a single, at least we didn't find any paved road in the whole of Region 9. Region 9 is the largest region in the country. There's not a single paved road.
And for our non-Guyanese listeners, where's Region 9?
Region 9 is the Rupununi Savannas, Lethem, so on.
You followed David Granger around, and I'm going to make an assumption here that you were perhaps for the coalition and for change in Guyana. How would you say from your belief in the coalition, due to being in the presence of David Granger so often, how would you say it changed from when you first started to now?
My belief in the coalition,
and
sorry,
in the coalition and what David Granger stood for. Would you say that your belief changed in any way or increased in any way from the time you started following him around or documenting him to now?
Yeah, definitely, because you see the sincerity of the man. We were in situations that we didn't have to be in. We went to links that I don't think a normal politician would go through. Pushing extra meters. If we were scheduled one day to visit 4 villages, we'd visit a 4th one. We go and stop by somebody to have to discuss an issue with the schools. Never once have I seen David Granger, even when we've been hours late, you know, for the next engagement, because the transportation was or whatever. He's always been very, very serious about stopping to hear the problems of the people and sitting down personally, listening to them, making his own notes, and you know, he's great with follow up. I've never seen him once try to. I hope this language is permissible on your program. I've never seen him try to BS people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've been on the river at night, you know, to make sure, and that's something that you're not supposed to do. For the folks who aren't familiar with river travel, we've been on the river at night. We've flown at night. We've put ourselves, I mean, the entire team and him in particular, because he's 69, going to turn 70 this year, and to see this man just push all the time, and with all the rough travel, you know, the rough roads, going from one meeting to the next, and addressing everyone's concerns, all of them, you know, as even more than one could reasonably expect to.
Guyana, as you know, we have a coalition. Guyana has a history of racial division, a history of ethnic division, and so on between the two major races. Do you believe, from what you have seen and observed in David Granger, that he has the will and the fortitude to um, pursue reconciliation, to pursue a national conversation on race relations?
Yes, I do believe. I do believe he has the will. He has the fortitude to do it. Um, but I will say this though. Um, I think right now there are some very serious, very hard, even painful conversations that we need to have in this country. And David Granger recognizes this. He's spoken about the need to reach across boundaries. Um, it's the reason why whenever we go into the Rupununi, we have native speakers there to translate, to make sure that everything that we say or that the team says is communicated, and we can have conversation. But beyond that, I think that as much as we have to reach out to each other across boundaries, I think there are conversations that each community, whether Indian descendant, African descendant, indigenous, whatever the case may be, need to have within their own communities, because within our own communities, there's a certain language that we speak amongst ourselves. There's certain cultural references that we understand better. It's just a way of communicating that we have uniquely within our community. So I think that we need to ask ourselves hard questions about ourselves, because of right now, I've been monitoring social media and newspapers and so on, and there are a lot of ugly things happening, and there are a lot of ugly things happening that are eating away at this victory. Right.
That's a profound statement. Things that are happening that are eating away at the victory.
Yes, and I'm not too sure what is happening right now, because I'm hearing conflicting reports. But apparently there's some land grab situations going on right now on the East Bank and on the East Coast. There's some talk, though I don't know how widespread it is, how serious it is, about East Berbice seceding from Guyana. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And you think that these people can't possibly be serious when they say these things. But then when you stop and look at the result, you look at the results of the election, and if you believe that indeed the coalition won by 4,500 votes or something close to it, then you have to start asking serious questions as to as to how people consume these lies, how people consume these evil things that we have said about each other. Because I cannot look at the landscape. I cannot look at the coalition campaign for all its strengths and shortcomings, and I can't look at the PPP campaign side by side and then look at the situation on the ground, whether it's in Georgetown or in Region 1 or in Region 9 or in Region 10, and I can't reflect on the crowds that we've gotten at rallies, even though I understand that rallies don't win elections. But to just the anecdotal and the other evidence of the support that this coalition had, but then to come back with that result, knowing that there is higher voter turnout as well, says that we have some deep-seated issues within our population. Without wanting to get too preachy or self-righteous, we have some spiritual issues that we need to get through. When I say spiritual, I don't mean religious. I'm not talking about religiosity.
Mm-hmm.
We're broken. We're broken people, and we've started to heal. And I would like to think that we would have started to heal, And we've seen some of that. We've seen some people maturing intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, and so on. But if you look at the macro, we have a far, far, far way to go.
So, Kojo,
Mm.
what do you think is a possible solution?
Um, hmm.
National
I'm,
conversation. I mean,
I'm still trying to sort that out myself, and at the risk of sounding like I'm advertising myself or whatever. I think culture does have to play a large role in it. I've heard Granger talk about this. We know Ruel Johnson feels strongly about this, but I think part of the problem is identity. There really is no Guyanese identity, really. Or some people have struggled to define what a Guyanese identity is, and I like that how Sarah Barat identifies language as the thing that glues together or maybe defines our Guyanese-ness. But I think that I don't feel as though we really have a Guyanese identity. If we had a Guyanese identity, the likes of Barjagdio could not come and do what he does and not be chased out of town with pitchforks. You know, it's because we have these silos of Indian identity and African identity. I'm not saying not to have pride in your heritage and your ancestry, but oftentimes we turn this pride into side. We have these silos of Indian identity, African identity, Amerindian identity, and we don't see each other as Guyanese. And I mean, all the you know, we're all the cultural output, let's put it that way, music, film, artwork, whatever the case may be, um, you know, how much of it is Guyanese, how much of it speaks to a Guyanese identity, you know. Folks on the coast, I've been immensely lucky. I thank God for it all the time that I've had the opportunity through different initiatives, whether it's a campaign or volunteer work or what have you, to travel Guyana to get a sense of what Guyana is.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people don't know what Guyana is, don't know what Guyana's people are, don't know. Folks on the coast have no idea about the geography and the culture of Amerindian people, and so Amerindian issues don't resonate with them. So it's the other, you know, even though it's the same country, it's we see each other. That's the other, and even don't even need to go to that extreme. Very often, during the troubles in Linden with the shootings, having been very active in the AFC at that point in time and being able to be on the ground and have a more intimate understanding of what was going on, seeing it with my own eyes and hearing the background of the problems, and then coming to Georgetown and try to explain to people, okay, this is the issue. No. The people are not not asking for a handout. They're not leeches. They're not this. You know, Linden and Georgetown aren't that. You know, those two places aren't that far from each other. But the way people refer to Lindeners and their issues, they were the other.
Mm.
So it's this otherness that we have. We are so fragmented. You know, we're divided by ethnicity, and we're separated by distance from each other. Even when that distance geographically in a real space is not that far.
Would you say this would call or part of the solution would require leadership from both sides of the aisle?
It requires more than leadership from both sides of the aisle. It requires leadership from the top to the bottom, and also from the bottom to the top. People within their own sensible, humanistic, if I'm using the term correctly, people from within the community have to be able to raise their voices and say, no, this is wrong. People like Sarah Barak, We need more Sarah Barats in communities all across this country, not just Indian, but Amerindian and so forth, to say, no, this is wrong. It's wrong in that in a African village on the East Coast, my black brother, for you to be hurling racial slurs at East Indians. And not because you and I look the same means I'm going to give you a pass. That's not right. Indians have to tell other Indians that, all this thing about calling your African brothers monkeys and all this and sort of that is wrong. That, what, if we do, and I recognize that in people are exuberant about this change, and in their exuberance, they've done some things that perhaps are questionable, but don't damn the person. Be cognizant of the fact that people have felt oppressed for years and years and years, and have had their humanity brought into question. And that is a result. The way people are behaving as a result of that. Perhaps on all sides, because not just two sides. A lot of the times we forget our Amerindian brothers and sisters, our Chinese brothers and sisters, Portuguese, and so on.
This conversation, as I often say to you, Kojo, a half hour is hardly ever enough. But this conversation must continue. You're pushing for a national conversation on race, and I think it is important that we continue to have these conversations. I personally have decided to say I am Guyanese, and not I am Afro-Guyanese. And I mentioned this on my wall the other day, that I am not going to tolerate any kind of discussion about ethnic obligation or ethnic status. And anybody who uses that kind of vocabulary in my presence, I'm going to tune them out. I think you are absolutely right. We have to find the courage to speak to our brethren, whether you're Indian or Afro-Guyanese or whomever. Speak to those who look like you and demand that they be more tolerant, be more inclusive, and stop this nasty rhetoric. I tell you the truth, over the past several weeks of the campaign, I was really appalled that one of our former president would spout the kind of rhetoric that he was spouting. But that's for another conversation. I want to thank you so very much, Kojo, for appearing on CWS as it is again. And I'm looking forward to...
Thank you for having these conversations.
I agree. Keep up the good work, my brother. And I'm hoping one day I'll get a chance to look at your portfolio.
One day.
All right, man. Take care, man. One love.
All right.
To the hopeless, you're the peace to the restless. You are